Today, as on any other day, the soldiers of the Republic of Korea are guarding the demilitarized zone that divides the Korean peninsula into the communist-occupied North and the Free South, the Republic of Korea. Many of the combat elements of the United Nations forces left Korea following the signing of the armistice in 1953, but the Korean armed forces continued to perform their vital mission of guarding the 150-mile front. Though the buffer zone now lays in silence, it is reminiscent of the days of tragedy, the strategic retreat of the combined United Nations and Republic of Korea forces. And it also recalls clearly an overwhelming victory by the Allied forces following the successful landing at Incheon. Today, because of its task of defending the nation from possible aggression, and because of its dedication to the welfare of the nation since the historic 1961 military revolution, the armed forces acquired increased stature among the Korean people. For this reason, the coming of October 1st, 1962, the 14th anniversary of the founding of the Republic of Korea Armed Forces, meant much to the Korean people, as well as to people in our friendly allied nations. In order to participate in the Armed Forces Day celebrations, military delegations from the 16 allied nations which fought against the communists during the Korean War arrive at Gimpo International Airport. They are warmly received by the ranking government officials, ROK military leaders, and the general public. At the airport, the military representatives review the ROK honor guards. The morning of October 1st, 1962. On this day of the 14th anniversary, Korean Armed Forces boasts of outstanding capability as a vital element in the free world's defense against international communism. They are well aware that rapid growth was due to the assistance from friendly nations, with development tempered by the sacrifice of 155,000 men on the battlefields during the Korean War. Here at the Armed Forces Cemetery in Seoul, Acting President Supreme Council Chairman Chung-hee Park, Supreme Council members, chiefs of 3 service branches, and cabinet ministers pay tribute to the heroic war dead who gave their lives for the cause of freedom. Then, military representatives from the 16 allied nations follow. They seem to recall the vivid memory of fighting side by side with their fellow Korean soldiers during the Korean War. the military delegates also visit the United Nations Cemetery at Busan. Here lie the men who sacrificed their lives for the cause of the free world. When the shooting ended, United Nations casualties numbered 150,000. They await the day when their successors will take up the sacred cause for which they died. From early morning, an excited crowd packed the stadium at famous Hyochang Park in Seoul to observe the 14th anniversary ceremony. As Chairman Park arrives, a 21-gun salute is fired in his honor. This is accompanied by the Korean national anthem. Attending the ceremony are Chairman Park, members of the cabinet headed by Premier Hyun-chol Kim, chiefs of 3 armed services, United Nations Commander General Guy S. Milroy Jr., members of the Foreign Diplomatic Corps, and military representatives of the 16 Korean War allies. Girl students in traditional Korean costume present to the military delegates bouquets of flowers to express a heartfelt welcome. Following a speech by Minister of National Defense Byung-gun Bak, Chairman Park delivers his message for the occasion.
친애하는 국군 장병 여러분, 그리고 내외 귀빈, 시민 여러분, 특히 오늘 이 자리를 빛나게 해주신
Officers and men of the armed forces of the Republic of Korea, military delegations of the 16 Korean War allies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great privilege for me to declare on this day of the 14th anniversary of the founding of the ROK Armed Forces that members of our armed forces are faithfully executing their duty of defending the country. Today, the ROK Armed Forces form a strong bulwark of free world defense against red aggression.
이단 대한민국의 간성일 뿐만 아니라 자유세계의 보류로서 군중 침략에 대한 방패가 되고 있으면 참으로 마음 든든한 일이라 아니할 수 없습니다. 친애하는 육해공군 해병대 장병 여러분.
Now, Prime Minister Hyun-chol Kim and United Nations Commander General Milroy deliver their messages. During the ceremony, a total of 2,871 soldiers are presented either service medals or presidential citations for their achievements in developing the armed forces during the period from 1954 to May 1962. As their part in the celebration, National Police motorcycles and the mounted police pass through Sejongno intersection on Capitol Avenue. Then a costumed parade by performing artists dressed in ancient Korean armed forces follows. A group of artists plays the role of the soldiers of the Koguryo Kingdom, which lasted for 700 years till the middle part of the 7th century. Then comes a team representing the Silla Kingdom, which enjoyed prosperity for 1,000 years until the 10th century. Now, musicians of the National Classical Music Institute played the role of a Yi Dynasty military band during the masquerade parade. Here is the famous turtle ship, the fabulously famous craft invented by Admiral Sun Shin Lee, who destroyed the crack Japanese navy of Hansan Island in 1598. Crowd that literally packed both sides of the street respond with wild applause, followed by silent admiration, for the colorful costumes and traditional music played by the performers are most attractive. Now, Korean actors and actresses appear. A group of popular comedians dressed as primary school children especially attract curious old people as well as little tots. A placard held by high school girls who precede soldiers gives them the title of exemplary soldier. At the Seoul City Hall Plaza, the exemplary soldiers are honored with citations by Mr. Tal Yong-yu, the director of the National Reconstruction Movement headquarters, as city officials, students, and general public watch. In the meantime, a party is given for the military delegations of the 16 Korean War allies at the scenic Gyeonghae-ru Pavilion. attending this party, planned and hosted by Mr. Byung-Won Bak, Minister of National Defense, our Supreme Council Chairman Park, chiefs of the three armed services, General Milloy, high-ranking government officials, businessmen and educators. The military leaders of the 16 allied nations now visit Panmunjom, the meeting place of the Military Armistice Commission. In the year 1953, the fighting troops fought to a standstill, and the United Nations Command began truce negotiations at Kaesong and Panmunjom. Though the Korean people pleaded to be allowed to march north and reunify their country, international circumstances compelled the United Nations to sign an armistice agreement here at Panmunjom on July 27, 1953. Here, the visitors received renewed reassurance regarding the vigil on the part of the ROK soldiers against any possible enemy attack. At Seoul's Citizens Hall and Capitol Ground, a display of military equipment is open to the public. In this exhibit, more than 700 different types of weapons possessed by the Korean Army are on display. The display attracts a capacity crowd every day. Let us meet Mr. Byung-Won Bak, Minister of National Defense.
오늘은 우리 국군 장병들이 국가의 안전보호라는 지상 의무를 수행하기 위하여 계속적인
On this day, marking the 14th anniversary of the foundation of the Republic of Korea Armed Forces, I extend congratulations and best wishes to the officers and men of the ROK Army. This is another milestone in our continued endeavors to share in the supreme responsibility, the security of our country. Our forces were born with our republic when the republic was declared 14 years ago, have grown up with the republic, and have been standing by the republic. With the encouraging support and assistance of the U.S. and many other nations, the communist invaders were repelled in the Korean War. Nevertheless, all kinds of heartbreaking tragedies followed and continued in this devastated land. Even the military men had to be encouraged to take part in the civic rehabilitation work while engaged in the performance of their normal missions. Recently, the military was charged with additional responsibility to end corruption, malpractices, and communist or pro-communist activities within the country. Truly, the past decade for the ROK forces has been alive with trials, challenges, ordeals, failures, and lessons. Let us remember that we have paid so much, and a tremendous number of men of the U.S. and many other nations gave their lives here in order that on this spot of the world there might be a new birth of freedom. While it is true that the ROK forces have made great strides in many ways, they must keep on improving the condition of readiness to perform tasks. Preparedness can be effected through modernization, realistic training, constant self-orientation, and thorough supply economy. Modernization of the ROK forces is one of the essentials for the combat readiness, enabling us to meet new requirements. Training must be realistic. Your present training will ensure the ability to fight and produce the vital ingredient of victory, the spirit, the will to win. On this meaningful day, in order to be worthy of those who have gone before us, of our made pledges of last year, of the principles for which we stand, of the country we so proudly serve, and of the support by the United Nations, including the U.S., let us determine that we will loyally, honorably, and ably fulfill our responsibilities to our nation. I am sure all the confidence placed in us by our nation and friendly allies shall be fully justified when time comes. With pride on this day, I salute you, the men and women of the Republic of Korea forces. Thank you.
자랑스러운 마음으로 대한민국 국군 여러분들의 노고에 감사하며 간곡한 인사를 드리는 바입니다. 감사합니다.
General Jung-ho Kim, Army Chief of Staff.
우리는 앞으로도 가열일로에 있는 국제 정세와 목전에
In facing increasing tension in international affairs,
가일층
by standing firm against the threat by the communist troops in the north, I pledge that the ROK Army will always remain in the forefront of the struggle against vicious red intentions. Through continued education and training, and contributing toward the reconstruction of our country, the ROK Army will continue to do its share as defender of freedom. And I pray for those who gave their lives during the Korean War.
산화하신 전후 영령들의 명복을 빌고 유가족 여러분께 삼가 애도의 뜻을 표하는 바입니다.
The ROK Armed Forces grew out of actual battle and had a rare opportunity to test their capabilities by fighting shoulder to shoulder with troops of many different nations of the world against red aggression. The fighting spirit of ROK forces is attributed partly to young officers in the Army who have been trained at the military academy located at Taenong. Here at Korea's West Point, cadets receive a well-rounded education. Emphasis is placed on doing rather than observing, and cadets demonstrate their knowledge in well-equipped laboratories. Through observation and actual participation in combined maneuvers, the future Army commanders acquire military tactics and strategy. After 4 years of hard work and study, cadets are graduated. Each receives the Bachelor of Science degree and the commission as second lieutenant in the Korean Army. Paratroopers, they played an important role at the time of the military revolution in May 1961. Day in, day out, these defenders of freedom engage in strict and rigorous training. They must be in perfect condition with nerves of steel, for leaping from a plane and landing with pinpoint accuracy requires courage and ability. Quick thinking and the capability of meeting any situation make those men the great asset they are to the armed forces of the Republic of Korea. Army Recruitment Center at Nonsan, to To this biggest induction center in Korea, draftees and volunteers from all parts of the country are inducted. Here they receive 8 weeks basic training prior to their assignments.